You're listening to the She Lift Project podcast, a show dedicated to helping women achieve higher levels of success in the workplace. No matter where you are in your career, we want to help you grow. Now here's your host, Cynthia Kirkpatrick, a CPA, CFP, and Senior Financial Advisor at Moneta Group.
Welcome to another episode of the She Lift Project podcast. I'm Cynthia Kirkpatrick. Thanks for joining us again today. And we have Beth Gunter. She is Chief Revenue Officer and Partner at Spry Digital. She is also founder of the networking event 1 Degree of Separation and current chairperson of the Foundation Development Board at St. Louis Children's Hospital. Not only that, we're going to go personal. She has 4 kids, mother, and you've been a part of 3 international best-selling compilation books, if that isn't enough. Also, while at Spry Digital, you've helped lead a record-breaking increase in revenue since joining in 2022.
Yes.
Thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
I'm sure we're going to talk about all of that and more regarding the success you've had and your journey along the way, because we always know it's never just a straight shot to the top.
Absolutely. True story. And mine is very, very jagged. So it'll be fun to get to talk about it today.
Yeah, and we've been friends for a couple years. Actually met through...
At 1 Degree. You came to a 1 Degree.
Yeah, came to a 1 Degree. And I think, though, we were on a webinar or a virtual meeting through a female networking event.
Yes.
And if I remember right, you said something about business development. And I said, okay, I need to meet her. I need to learn more about that. Let's connect. And so we did. And just have gotten to know each other more, become friends through that.
Absolutely. And in fact, that was probably during COVID, because that's where, honestly, some of my best networking connections were made. And so I think then when we got to get out of COVID and start meeting people in person, I think one of the things that was so impressive at the 1 Degree, and I'll just jump in and tell you all about 1 Degree because I'm already on that train of thought in my mind, is it started about 8 or 9 years ago when I was in transition between positions. And the company that I'd worked for, I'd worked there for many, many, many moons and had moved across the country and ended up here in St. Louis, and I didn't know anyone. I literally spent time in the 4 walls of my office, my condo, and an airport. That was my life. St. Louis just seemed to be a stopping point. So when I found myself in transition, I didn't know anybody. I didn't have any connections to pull from in order to be able to go and apply for a position. And we all know that applying for positions is about who you know a lot of times, especially with AI and the way that things are set up now. So I had zero network. I started reaching out to the 2 people I knew within St. Louis who thankfully then connected me exponentially to so many other people. And so 1 Degree ended up being a thank you to the community who had been there for me and had networked with me. So I believe you came right after 2020. Prior to that, when I first started, we had a strong 10 to 15 people every single time. Now it is upwards of 50 to 100 people per event. It's complimentary. I just want people to come in, build real connections with people, and walk away with friendships. And to be quite honest, that is exactly what has happened. I get raving reviews every time. And personally, all of my good dear friends, like yourself, have been met through 1 Degree. So it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's quarterly.
It is quarterly.
So you're not you don't feel like, oh, every month I got to try to fit this in. And if you don't make it a quarter, et cetera, it's not one of those, I got to make sure I bring someone. I've got to make sure I connect so many people. It's casual, yet you make great connections, great relationships, great friends.
Absolutely. It is super casual, and I want it to be that way. When it was smaller, it was a lot easier for me to truly know enough about everyone to make those really warm introductions. I still greet everyone at the door. I still try to ask, unless the door gets swamped, what's a good conversation for you? What's a good opportunity? So that of the people that I do know in the room, I can kind of point them in the direction, and I say, okay, tell this person Beth sent you. And so then they go over and I watch them. They go over and they talk to that person. And honestly, it has worked really well. So, and I think having it quarterly, not only is it just I don't have to worry about it more than once a quarter, although it's a quarter light because I avoid summer and holidays. But it's one of those things that if you miss it, you're going to wait another 6 months or 5 months before you go. So it creates a type of cachet with the event.
Yeah. And you just never know. You're going to see some same faces, which is great because, there's never like one time and you have that connection cemented. And then you don't know who will be there the next time because they might not be there every time.
Exactly. But I think that's part of, to jump into networking, because networking is, honest to goodness, that is my lifeblood. I never realized how much I really enjoy it until one degree, but then frankly, I've been in sales all my life. So true networking is when, and I encourage this, and I always tell people, if someone isn't nice to you at this event, you tell me, and I'm not going to invite them again. And I have done that only once. So with networking, when you are at an event like that, I think it's really important to be inclusive. We've all been in situations, we've all been in rooms where we feel like the odd duck. We don't know anyone, and you're walking into a room cold. And even having been in sales all my life, there is nothing less comfortable than walking into a room cold. So to me, true networking is when you walk up to a group, you see that they're talking, and it's the open body language. It's the, oh, hey, introduce yourself, and then you start talking to them. And then that person introduces you to the rest of the people in the group and then asks them some simple questions like, what brings you here today? Or what's a good conversation for you? What do you do? Anything that will warm up a conversation. And with networking, it's also important not to leave somebody in the middle of the dance floor. And what I mean by that is, if you're having a conversation, maybe the conversation fades, you don't want to just say, okay, thanks, and walk away. It's intentional to then introduce them to the next person so that, or even if you don't know that person, so that they aren't left on the dance floor by themselves.
Lots of years of this event, lots of quarters, lots of any stories that stick out to you, success networking or introductions that stick out to you from one degree?
There are so many. And I love getting the quotes afterwards. And I think Lene Brumbaugh, and I apologize if I mispronounce her name, but she has become a dear friend. We were co-authors in one of the international bestsellers together. And she wrote a post on LinkedIn about how there's nothing more amazing than walking in and seeing Beth's smiling face and then being warmly introduced to a room full of people. And that's just the environment I create. So that's not necessarily a success story, although I have heard of so many people. And I think really what it is I hear, oh, I made a lot of great connections, but I don't always hear the flip side of it is I followed up with these 5-10 people, because that's really the secret sauce with networking. It's great to build relationships, but if you're not following up with them and talking to them afterwards, then I don't know, it's just you may as well not even have come if you're not going to do anything with those relationships that you build, unless that's just what you want to do is you were bored one night and you wanted to go out and say hello to people. But if you're truly into networking, I think going out, and my little cheat is I always write a note on the back of the business card of what my conversation was. I am analog in that sense. I know people walk around with their LinkedIn and they do the pictures of your profile. My problem is that I get so many and I meet so many people that there is literally no way that I'm going to remember this one singular conversation unless you really stick out, which of course I like to have happen too, because then that's where you build the relationship.
And you're there to network and make relationships.
Of course.
And connect. I mean, make relationships, but you're there for business. They're there for business too. So if there's any sort of fear afterwards, or should I reach out to that person, you're both there for the same thing.
Yes.
And, reach out. If they don't respond, they don't respond. But
absolutely.
Do the reach out.
Yep, exactly. Even if it's just a LinkedIn follow-up and then you have a historical context. I can't tell you how many times I've met people and we've communicated, and then some other great networkers like yourself in the St. Louis community will say, oh, hey, I've got this person I want you to meet. And then I go back into my LinkedIn and say, well, this was a fail on both of our parts because we didn't stay in touch. And so it's a great opportunity to get reintroduced to each other.
Right. Well, another big part of your life is Spry Digital.
It is the biggest part of my life outside of my family. I am so fortunate to be at a company like Spry. In an interview I did not too long ago, I think I mentioned our CEO, Sheila, who's also been a guest on this show. I'm pretty sure I mentioned her name no less than 5 times in the interview I did, because she has built a company that has just been amazing. The culture there is really, honestly, it wasn't the fact that we do web design, application, software creation, and branding, and we ultimately help companies grow. So the widget is the widget. I have been in so many different environments. I have sold so many different things that really, at the end of the day, what I have found out is it's not about the widget. It's about the culture, it's about the people you work with, and it's about the clients that support you and you support them in that effort. So having found myself at Spry Digital has been wonderful. I will tell you a little bit about the story on how Sheila and I first connected. As I mentioned, all roads lead back to networking. So we were at a networking event. I believe it was the Arch Awards, and we just hit it off, had a great conversation, and that was probably 6 years ago. We stayed in touch. We both ended up writing a chapter in another one of the international best-selling books, and I found myself in a position where I was in transition yet again. We can, of course, dive into that more, but found myself in transition again. And I reached out in that forum with the women who had written this book together and shared that I was in search of a position. Sheila said, I would love to have a conversation with you about that and how we could bring you on to Spry Digital. So needless to say, we had a conversation. It was fantastic. I have always been an entrepreneur. In the first company I worked for, that was really the heart of what that business meant, was being a person who ran their own business. And so I did. At the ripe old age of 21, I was running a multi-million-dollar business. So I've always had that in
so were you in college still? What were you doing?
I had just graduated. So I was one of those people who had just graduated college. The whole premise of this company is run your own business. And so I did. I had the training. I went through it. It was pretty grueling and worked 60, 70, 80 hours was more the norm, and really learned how to run a profit and loss, how to run my own numbers. And frankly, this is coming from a person who is an English major, who is planning on becoming a lawyer, and who had no intention of being a business person. But my friend who worked for the company at the time said, "Hey, you know how to balance a checkbook, don't you?" And I said, "Yes." "Great. I'd like for you to come interview for the company that I work for." And I was hired on the spot. I guess I was bubbly enough. And when I look back at 21-year-old version of me, I can assure you I was very bubbly. And yeah, I was hired on the spot, and I was there for 21 years. So
what were you selling? What was the business?
So it was the car business. And it's what's interesting when I take a step back and I look at all of the roles I've had. Sales is relationship. All you are selling is yourself in a pure and holistic manner, but that's really what you're doing. You are selling, can you trust me as a person? Can you believe in what I'm talking to you about? Are my stories resonating with you so that you feel, yes, I want to buy whatever it is that she is selling? And that's really been the way that I have approached sales, relationship. Any position I've ever been in has all been about building that relationship. So I would sell protection on vehicles. I also sold vehicles, and I would sell warranty. A whole plethora. And mind you, my very first day, it was in Charleston, South Carolina, because that's where I grew up. And it was the first hot day of the year. This was 1 week after I graduated college. I was wearing a blue pinstripe suit with a silk blue blouse, and I was sweating my tail off, washing a car, and I couldn't believe my fate that I was outside washing a car, and here I am with a college degree. And I went home, and I remember this vividly. I went home. Of course, I was crying because my dad didn't even believe that I was going to go and work for this company. And I said, what am I doing here? And he was like, "Remember, I did research on that company after you and I spoke, and you did make a great decision, and I'm so proud of you." And I stuck it out. And then I was like, I'm only going to be here for a year. And then a year became 2, became 3, became 10, became 15, and then 21 years. And it was such a phenomenal experience with learning how to deal with clients or customers, because I did find that where I enjoyed my space wasn't necessarily in the B2C realm. It was more in the B2B realm. So that was how I got truly into sales. I became a business-to-business salesperson, negotiated contracts, and did that and have been doing that ever since. Again, English degree, going to become a lawyer. And I'll tell you, what I realized about being a lawyer after all of these years of being in sales, and A Few Good Men was the movie, by the way, that got me. But being a lawyer is really just being a salesperson. You are selling a jury, you're selling whomever on the concept of what you are offering. And so really naturally, I think salesperson or lawyer, they aligned quite well in my world. But the reason I mentioned the English major too was I started running that profit and loss statement when I was 21 years old. I started to understand what accounts receivables were, accounts payables, because I was paid off of whatever we made in that location. And I, like many people, love the value of the dollar, and I figured out pretty quickly how to make money. So that is how I began there.
As we talked about early on, coming to Spry Digital, and talk about, Sheila and all of that, but Chief Revenue Officer, clearly that has had to have had an impact on where you're at today.
Absolutely. I think debatedly, my parents would say that I've been in sales all my life. And to talk a little bit about what Chief Revenue Officer means, it makes you think just money, But really it's, and Sheila and I have had conversations about this, it's more a chief experience officer. And that is a title. Chief Revenue Officer and Chief Experience Officer are new in the industry. And I think, so for all my life, I was business development, I was sales executive, anything that had sales associated with it. But we've been talking today about relationships and networking and negotiations. That is all, and contracting. And yes, they're tied into revenue, but if you're going to run a business, revenue has to be part of what you do, unless you're in a non-for-profit. And even there, profit is in the name of the title. So I love what I do. And as Chief Revenue Officer, it is over sales and marketing. And it's about the growth sector, and not just how to help you grow your company, but more importantly, it's about how you help your clients grow their business.
And thinking about the business, because I am not in the IT space at all. In fact, I mean, I know it's important and I know it's necessary. However, I sort of have a love-hate relationship with it. When it doesn't go right, it's not working, I get very frustrated. And the apps on my TV at home, I don't like them. I don't like them when they don't work. And so, Spry Digital, it's on sort of branding, it's on websites, it's on, and you're going to explain it way better than I do, like client experience with a company's online presence.
So, Cynthia, when you are researching a company, when you are researching a prospective client, what is the very first thing you do before you pick up the phone?
You go on Google, you go on search.
Absolutely. So if you're a business who's trying to grow, why would you have a subpar website that has a terrible user experience, and people are looking for an answer and they can't find it in the first click? And the other very interesting thing, now that, not to show our age, but I was around before the internet was a real thing. And, I'm only 29, but...
Me too.
Yeah, exactly. But then you would do drive-bys. Then you would walk in and you would talk to the receptionist. Then you would call and you would make phone calls to find out all about them. And it was more of a face-to-face type of experience. Now we live in such a digital era where people don't have the patience even to wait 2 seconds for the website to pick up the photos, the videos, the images, all of the things, and then they're off and they're into another space. So when I talk about how we help companies to grow, that's what we do, is we want you to be presented in the best light you possibly can. We want you to look amazing to your prospective client. Or if you're a non-for-profit, we want you to look amazing to your donors or to your board. How easy is it to find out information about your mission statement? And one of the other things that has really shocked me since being in this space for 3.5 years, and by the way, I did become an owner in this, is that if the website, or that the average reading age of someone across the country is 5th grade level. So if you're talking about some really basic things and you're using huge flowery words, your audience isn't going to understand it. I have seen so many non-for-profits, and that is one of the sectors that we work in. We work with higher ed, non-for-profits, and small to mid-sized businesses as the Small Business Administration defines them, which is up to $1 billion. And I have gone on to non-for-profits websites and not been able to see what they're about. Who are your constituents? Who are the people that you're trying to serve? How and why are you trying to raise money? And what is the impact that it's going to have? And unless somebody finds that answer super quickly, they're going to go and spend their money somewhere else, which also is one of the things I love about St. Louis. We are the most philanthropic city of any city I have ever lived in. And we truly are the smallest large city. Everyone knows everyone, and I love how big all the hearts are of people here in St. Louis. With Spry Digital, we have a mighty team of people who are incredibly intelligent, are way more talented at all of these things. I always joke with clients about how you don't want me touching your website. I'm like you, Cynthia. IT and I have a bit of a love-hate relationship. So it's been more love since I have been working at Spry, but I also am the person that calls up tech support and says, oh my gosh, this isn't working. But we have a team of people who know how to do all of the things and are teaching me and our clients on a daily basis.
I laugh because recently there's 2 stores that come to mind where it was like, I just want to buy something from your store. Why won't you work? And why are you so slow? And why won't you load? And when I go back a page, why do you take me back to that page? This is so frustrating. So it does become clearer what you're saying. And even just last night, one of my daughters was like, this store's website's always so bad. So it makes a lot more sense. As you've walked into Spry Digital and into the space and have become more aware of it, do any stories stick out to you, that success stories that are just memorable or like, oh my gosh,
yes,
so successful?
So I spoke about higher ed. I'm not going to mention clients' names on here just because, but we have a very large university that we work with who's very well respected nationwide. And they had a page that was a bit of a mess, and that was self-subscribed or prescribed by them, not by me, because again, I'm not the IT person. And as it related to their parking, for example, you went onto their site and you could not find, and it's a huge campus, and you can't find where to park that is closest to wherever it was that I was going. I had the experience of personally working with it. I was already talking to the client about how we could help them with their website, and I personally had to go there for an event. And I could not find where I needed to park, how I needed to pay for it, any of the information. So needless to say, we got our team. We have actually a young lady on our team who has a master's in user experience. I've also picked up on the lingo. It's UX is what it's called. And she has a way of looking at a site and taking 50 pages of jumbly mess and putting it into a streamlined way in which you can very easily understand. And she puts, and all of our team does, that's one of the beauties of this company, is we put the human experience front and center. We want to make sure you, as a human, understand how to operate this site. Now, we're not the least expensive, but we do very high quality, and we truly listen to our clients. One of the experiences we had not too long ago is we went through a rebranding ourselves. Huge experience. It took us a while because there's a saying about the cobbler's children, and we were definitely the cobbler's children. So until we were able to get some other things aligned and work on our own branding, but we got to go through the experience ourselves. And Sheila, being a founder, and she actually wrote a blog on it, is that it was really traumatic. She was emotionally invested in our old brand that we had. And so going through this experience, seeing it firsthand on how within the own organization that I was in, those types of experiences really help me as a salesperson, as a consultative person, to work with a client and say, I get it. I know where you are. I understand where you're coming from. Let me share with you our experience, and let me share with you how we will get you through this. One of the things about that was so impressive is the team, our team, who sat and went through this exercise with us were so unbelievably patient with us. They came with great ideas. They came with a full color palette. They listened to what we liked and what we really, really didn't like. And they heard us on what we said about how our existing or our old branding looked and the concepts that we wanted to move towards. And you'd have to tell me what your thoughts are, but I'm quite pleased with how it came out. And we love the color palette, and the team just did a bang up job. So experiencing that firsthand gives me all the more ease and comfortability and trust, frankly, in our team to know that they're going to do the right thing when I bring them a client. And I think having that mutual trust between I'm going to negotiate a contract that is going to be beneficial to all, both the client and us, and now that I pass this relationship over that I have built in some cases for multiple years to the team, I know they're going to do a good job with it. And that has been, it's that validation that I feel that I made the right choice when not only did I take on the chief revenue officer position, but I also became the second largest owner in the company.
Yeah, and it goes back to what you said. I mean, culture is so important in, I think, not only the output and the team doing a great job in the product that you put out, but the people being happy, being good, having a good relationship with your clients, your customers, with the vendors, with whoever they work with, that if your culture isn't good, it's going to fall apart in some form or fashion, or it's not going to be as great as it could be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to that point, the trust that not only I feel of our team, but then our clients feel of our team. To your point, if you have a poor culture, and I've worked in the business of culture for a long time, and actually I sold culture, different story, different day, but I sold culture for a company for a while, and it falls apart, to your point, really quickly, and the client feels that. So if there is friction within the organization, it makes it really hard to build on that relationship, to grow it into perpetuity. Our average client who is with us is 7 years. That is a really long time. And it's like I always laugh about how I meet all my best friends on vacation, because if you're there for a period of time, you can only put on a show of who you truly are for a short period of time. You can't hold on to that for days, hours, weeks, etc. And that's how I look at our team, is they truly are unbelievable quality human beings. Because to have an average age of a client be 7 years, you can't fake that for that length of time.
Yeah, and I want to go back to something you said earlier, because it seems so simple, but as a female, it's so important. You mentioned the parking at that place. And I'm like, oh, big deal, parking. Yet, when you wear heels, and I don't care about location, females are always worried about security.
Yes.
And if you're carrying a bag or not, or it could be at a university, it could be anywhere else, and if you have a kid with you, whatever, parking is so important. Location is so important. Where do I have to go? You know, how far do I have to walk? Those things are so important. And if you can't know or look that up ahead of time, it's the little things that matter.
It is.
And if a company doesn't know that, or if they're not getting help with that, and if, you know, Spry, you guys can come in and see that and make such an impact on the daily use.
Absolutely.
That's huge.
And so you bring up a lot of great points with that. And I mean, how frequently parking can be such a frustration. I didn't even think of that from that perspective. For this university, it's also a revenue stream. it's a huge revenue stream. So if students aren't able to figure out how to renew their parking for the next semester, that's a lost opportunity. They may just decide to do something else, which is also fine, because trust me, I'm an environmentalist and I appreciate car sharing and band pooling and all the things, but it's a huge revenue stream, and it's a huge lost opportunity for a university if they don't have the right user experience. You mentioned kids, and it also made me think of my youngest. So you mentioned at the beginning, mom, very proud mom of 4 amazing children. And this is always the shock factor that I love to provide people, because with those 4 children, they range from ages of 23 down to 3 years old. And things are very different and what I love now is, I mean, all the widgets that they make for babies. It's unbelievable. And the allowances and understandings that vendors, that stores, that hospitals, that wherever have for juggling small children that they did not have when the 23-year-old was born and I was very young trying to figure out life. I mean, I was the mom that was juggling the baby and the backpack and the, diaper bag and wearing heels and a skirt and running in between doctor's appointments to take her places. And then I had to run back and go sit down in a high-level business meeting.
And hope your hair still looked okay and that you were still presentable.
Mind you, I lived in Charleston, and then in Oregon, and in both places, humidity is a real thing. So bad hair days were the norm.
Yeah, I feel you, and something that sometimes I wish, like, my next life, I want to come back as a guy, because they don't have to worry about those hair days like we do.
Yes.
The extra stress and anxiety.
Yes. I went to an all-girls school for 12 years, and I loved the experience. I was never told that I couldn't do something that a man could do, or a boy. And that was I'm just tapping on to what you just shared, because have I had moments where I think, it would be nice to come back as a guy, but then I'm like, no, women are so much cooler than men. No offense to the men out there. Of course, I have 3 boys and a husband, so, sorry guys. But women are expected to do so much and expected to juggle so much. We work remote at Spry Digital, and that's part of our culture. One of the things that makes it so amazing is, as a woman in business, you're expected to do the laundry still, get the kids to school, make sure that doctor's appointments are fulfilled. You're probably the person who's going to be called if something's going on at the school. You're coordinating the social calendar as well as your work calendar, and God forbid you get sick. It's a lot. And I hear stories of friends, significant others, and I just wonder how they get up out of bed in the morning, because it's just, we handle so much in a day, and we don't complain for the most part. We don't complain. We do it. We do it with great aplomb. And by the way, we also work full time. And I am forever amazed by the power of women and what women can do. And honestly, I don't think I had that deep appreciation. I know I did not have that deep appreciation for women when I was in school, surrounded by women all the time. I knew I didn't have to wear makeup. I knew my clothes were like, whatever. We didn't have uniforms. And so I didn't have that pressure, so I could truly focus on the schoolwork. But women can be really hardcore with each other and not the nicest. And it took a long time to figure out my female tribe. You're definitely part of that.
Thank you. Me too.
And the women, for many years of my life, I experienced women truly, honestly, stabbing you in the back and then stabbing the next woman in the back in order to climb their way up the ladder. And that was my experience with women in life, in the workforce. And once I realized that that wasn't okay, I had a phenomenal leader when I was in Oregon. And she and Sheila are my two sheroes. And she really showed me how being supportive of other women, how it looked. And then when I lived here in St. Louis and started networking with women and being intentional, because I got to choose who was in my circle. I heard a TEDx, probably, it was before COVID. So what is that? 8 years ago, maybe. I heard a TEDx and it was a woman who stood up there. I wish I remembered her name. I would give her all the credit in the world. But she said, you have to be cautious and mindful of the board of directors you invite into your head. And we as women especially listen terribly to that board of directors. And if you have one bad seat on there, one bad teacher, one bad classmate, one whatever from your history that you are listening to, it can really sabotage you. And it took, for whatever reason, it was an aha moment when I heard her say that. And I remember it couldn't have been 8 years ago because I was with my sister-in-law. So it was probably 6 years ago. And it was an aha moment for me when I just realized I need to surround myself with the people who I want to A, emulate, B, who I feel their advice is worthy and are really good human beings and who treat other women the way that I would like to be treated. And since then, and over the last decade, I have really, really focused on what that looks like for rising women up. Mentoring women. I've always had a passion for mentoring people, but mentoring women, helping them to get ahead, helping them to see the worth that they don't see that they have, that I see in them, and helping to rise that out of them. There is a mentee, and congratulations also on being Mentoring Monday.
You too, next Monday. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. This will be the third year I've done it. And last year I met a young woman who was in a scenario in her life that she knew that she wanted to make a change. And she was in my networking table. So we had a table and we were talking about networking and providing best practices, and we just clicked. And I followed up with her. I talked to her. She found herself in transition. She would write me, text me. If I have a mentee, I want them to feel comfortable in reaching out to me, because those types of scenarios don't pop up between 9 and 5. They're happening at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday night when, yes, that person is probably sitting there in family time, but that's a real moment for the person experiencing it. And I always want to be there for them. So I am very pleased to say that she found the job of her dreams, and she is incredibly happy with what she's doing and is just killing it out there. So I met her though at Mentoring Monday last year. And so I'm really looking forward to it again this year.
The board of directors, I think it's also very important that we're the head of that board of directors, and we need to be very careful with what we tell ourselves.
Yes.
And yes, curating who else is involved. The buck stops with us too. And often we may be the first one to cross that line of what we're telling ourselves.
I am the worst with that. I really, truly am. And that's a great call out, because I will dive into a topic or an issue and I'll just mull it over and over and over and over again until it's like I'm making myself crazy thinking about it, and I have to stop myself, pull myself out of the situation, maybe talk to somebody else, my wonderful husband, Tim, or honestly, my 2 older children are very wise in their age, and just talk about the scenario. Or thankful that my dad and my bonus mom are still around, that I can call them and I can ask them. And again, not just your family, but the women and men that are in your board of directors. Although I do find that my board of directors is mostly women now, which is a very different change from how it has been all my life. Now, mind you, I told you I went to an all-girls school. I also have 2 amazing sisters who I grew up with, and I had a single mom for a long time until she met my wonderful bonus dad. And I always babysat girls, and so I literally was surrounded by females. I mean, there was nowhere that I didn't go that I wasn't surrounded by women. And I remember my college advisor saying, "Hey, would you like to go to Columbia College?" Mind you, that's another all-girls college. And I said, "I appreciate that offer. Thank you so much. But I'm going to go to a co-ed school. Thank you." But I, growing up, though, it was, aside from my family, it was a lot of male influence in my life. And so being able to say that it's mostly women now is incredible to say. And, truly women like yourself and many of the other astounding women that we have in St. Louis. And I don't know, it's just, we're very fortunate to live in a community that we do. And not being from St. Louis, want to mention that, because there was a lot of naysaying about not being from St. Louis, and it's really hard to break into it, and oh my goodness. And frankly, it probably was, but you have to give the effort. And I mentioned those 2 people who introduced me to, honestly, if I look at my circle now, if I go back in time, I can create the linear points that lead back to these 2 young women. And that, I think, is the key, is when you're in a new community, and I have been in many new communities, when you're in a new community, you have to find your people. And that's if you're in college, that's if you're moving to a new city, that is anything. But you also have to give a lot of effort. You can't just wait for people to come to you. And when you find that one person and then you build that sphere from there, I think that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, I think whether you're from St. Louis or not, and I would imagine this is for most cities, most places, it's about the effort. You can't sit back and wait for everything to come to you. It just won't.
Yes.
And a lot of what you said was so great. The board of directors and who you let in, and quite frankly, just as important as who you keep out, or who maybe over time you've outgrown and you let go or push out. And that's okay. Not only is it okay, it's necessary. The rules or the stories of who are the 5 closest people in your life, and be very intentional about that, because that's who will elevate you versus bring you down. You're worth it. It's not selfish. It's critical. You're worth it. And unfortunately, there are some times where, maybe somebody's too negative all the time, or isn't putting in the effort, or is only taking from you, or whatever it might be, that, you do have to sort of, move into a different boat, or whatever it might be, and change that circle.
As you were speaking, I was thinking about a different board of directors and filling your bucket. And I think there are 2 things within what you were just saying, outside of myself being a literal board of directors. I mentioned the 3-year-old, And I have been on the board of directors for the Children's Hospital. It's the development board I'm in my 7th year. And it doesn't matter what is going on in your world, to give you great perspective, to go into the hospital and see these shining, smiling faces of kids who are handling much bigger challenges than what we are. And they're approaching it with such enthusiasm and determination. And in some cases, this is the only thing that they've ever known. So this is their norm. And I was on the board of directors before I found out I was pregnant with our son. And just because I had 2 older children, and thankfully I hadn't had the opportunity to really use children's for any major scenario. But I wanted to be supportive and, frankly, to make some good business connections of other business people in the community who had a same and common passion as I did in helping to support. My 2 are women and children. So if it's women and children, I'm right there. And our 3-year-old was born with some medical complications. And I was on the board. He was in the NICU for 4.5 months. And I remember leaving the NICU for a board meeting in the hospital. And at that moment, everything just crystallized. What I was doing sitting there, how I was helping to give back, what we were doing for raising money for the hospital, and what an amazing gem we have in St. Louis Children's Hospital here in St. Louis. Because of the NICU nurses, who many of which we're still friends with, many of which we send them Christmas cards, and I volunteer to go drop off gifts to people. And this past Christmas, they do an event called Snowflake Village. And the families get to go down into an area and pick out gifts for their family that are then wrapped by the volunteers and dropped off in their room. We actually experienced it because our son was born in December over Christmas. And so we experienced firsthand what that was like. To be in the hospital over the holidays and have your entire world upended. He was 6 weeks early. And while I'm a planner and I get stuff done well ahead of time, my kids will tell you I'm usually done Christmas shopping by October. But when you're pregnant and don't really have a lot of enthusiasm for a lot of things, some stuff like that kind of slips. So that was just a service that they provide to the families. And I got to go around and I saw some of my favorite NICU nurses that are still working there. And I tell you, the talent, the patience, the compassion that they feel, and the knowledge, because there were many, many times, I'm just going to say her pseudonym, Nurse Betty, she'd know exactly who this is, and I'm going to send this to her afterwards. Nurse Betty had to line me up a couple of times because I was just so upset over the scenario. I mean, you have this little teeny tiny person who's relying on you, and they can't come home with you. You're not getting to do all the other normal things that you got to do with your older children. My husband and I, we were at the hospital for 8 hours a day, every single day for 4.5 months, other than one day, which was my daughter's birthday. And that was the only day. And I couldn't go into the hospital that day. And the staff there, the medical staff, they are top notch. And I continue by being on this board to understand more and more, because a big part of what we talk about is the mission statement. And what the board does is raise money for these incredibly talented doctors to come and do research and development here in St. Louis. And I don't know if you knew this, but plastic surgery was actually begun in St. Louis at BJC during, it was either World War I or World War II, because of people who had been in like bombs and needed plastic reconstruction. And so that was founded here in St. Louis, which I just learned about recently. So when we talk about board of directors, when we talk about philanthropy, when we talk about filling your bucket, when I look at what, and I do consider my entire family, what my entire family, even my dad, has donated money to the hospital because of what they do and what they have done. We would not have our youngest if it weren't for the people. I honestly, truly, 100% believe that if it weren't for the talented doctors and nurses there, that he would not be here with us today. And when I look at all of those things, I think of when I'm having a bad day, when I need my bucket filled, I am surrounded by these amazing people, not only just the patients, but the staff. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't say I have the best board of all boards ever, because they too are so focused on doing what's right for kids and helping them out.
Yeah, you're right. St. Louis is very philanthropic. Not only are there so many charities and organizations here, there's also so many people who want to give and donate time, donate money, donate their talents, whatever it might be, that it's not as recognized as it probably could and should be here. And you've then got, all the organizations that have these amazing boards in places that do so much good
Absolutely
around the area. And I loved what you said is so often we have difficult days, times, moments in life. And if you can find something that can bring you back to a moment of joy that can just sort of lift you up or out of that, finding that thing that is for you, whatever that is, that's a good thing or tool in life. And it sounds like you found one on your bad days, bad moments, to try to lift you up and pull you out of that.
Absolutely. And I know I keep coming back to networking, but honestly, I just love being around people. And I think one of the things when I start feeling, because we are remote, we're working from the house, I've got 5 beautiful people that I can go walk out the door of my office to talk to, but sometimes it's nice to just talk to other people that are not them. And going to what always, and if you can't tell, I'm an extroverted extrovert. So filling my bucket is being around people. And so going to an event, just whatever it is also a great way to, I think the long and the short of it is to understand yourself and to know what's going to help you when you're having those bad days, because you aren't able, especially as you get higher within an organization and you're in leadership, you can't rail on your employees. That will do nothing to help your culture of your company. You have to find that board of directors. You have to find the outlets that bring you joy. And a hobby that I enjoy, gardening when it's warm outside. I love just getting out of my head, listening to some great music, and just weeding the beds or planting some plants. Just doing something that just gets you out into nature. I mean, it's just as basic as that. Or at one point I used to salsa dance, and if I had a rough day, man, I burned some serious calories. Or photography now is another thing that I really get great joy out of. Sheila's running for Kirkwood City Council, so that's my plug for her. And yesterday I had the pleasure of taking pictures of her for her campaign, and we even commented on it. So we work together, obviously, very closely. And she even commented, it's the things like this that get us out of our head and connecting in different ways. And I think that's really important as well. I am remiss in talking about the third powerhouse to our trio is Dawn. And she has worn more hats. She is the number one person to raise her hand if something needs to be done. She is an absolute dynamo and probably one of the kindest, nicest people who also will draw that line if you're being silly. She'll tell you straight up, but she is also a super dynamo. To be able, I have never in my life worked in a place like Spry Digital. I don't have the Sunday dread. I was nervous about today, but I do not have the Sunday dread of, oh my gosh, I've got to go to work. I don't want to go to work. Since I have been here for 3.5 years, I, honest to goodness, and I cannot say that in all my years of working anywhere, I cannot say that. I, honest to goodness, wake up every single morning and I'm like, let's do this. Let's make it happen. And I can assure you, it has not been all sunshine and rainbows and puppies. It has been a challenging couple of years, especially for small women-owned business agencies. Each of those, individually stated, have all had challenges over the last couple of years. Fortunate me, I jumped in right as all of this was happening, but I have learned so much in being within this space and just being an owner with two dynamic women who both teach me something new and different every day, and working with a team of people who honestly, I just can't say enough about. They're phenomenal.
Well, and you're working with two women now. You've got a great relationship. Sounds like you're working together great as a team. You know, earlier in our conversation, you were talking about being with women who were stabbing, moving up the ladder. And at the time, and I'm like, I'm going back to this, I was curious, you know, and I've had an experience of that in my life. I've found more and more women helping more recently. And so it's been, 13, 14 years since that experience. Was it the company? Was it the culture? Was it the time? Are we getting better at that? Because, when I think about the evolution of women, we only had so many seats at the table. I mean, it was almost like intentionally they're like, okay, fight it out, ladies, you have to backstab. So I'm just curious what that experience was like. Was it the company, the culture of that company? Was it the space, the location? What was that like? And are we getting better and beyond that, or no? Or
I vacillate on this one. I go back and forth because I am in a space right now where there is none of that, truly, honestly. And so it's hard for me to say that in 3.5 years, this is, yes, it is finally changed. I see things happening in the world. I hear things happening in the world. And I don't know. I still think we have a lot of work to do, especially in male-dominated environments. IT and tech is heavily male-dominated, and that's been part of the whole benefit of what Sheila has brought. She is a powerhouse woman who's been in this industry for 30 however many years. She also is 29, so even prior to her birth. And so I think there's still a lot of work to be done. And I think the more that we build that board of directors full of women who are supporting other women, the more we talk about how important it is to support other women. Because I think in other scenarios, I've been there, and it's lip service. It's, oh yeah, women need to support other women, but really at the end of the day, they're the ones stabbing you in the back. I think, and it's like high school. I mean, it just feels like that negative cattiness. I took an executive women in leadership course through Cornell, and not that that is the end all be all course, because there are plenty of courses out there, but it was pretty phenomenal and very eye-opening. And I think that taking courses like that, encouraging other women to do that type of self-improvement, self-exploration is really key to make it known, especially to our male counterparts, how amazing women are. It's talking about them, other women, in a room when they're not there. It is networking them with other people. It is making it known that it is not okay to backstab each other. We are all in this together, and we're only going to get up and out of this if we are here supporting each other. With that course, it taught me, it put words to what I had already thought and experienced. And so I really appreciated that extra learning. A friend of mine in Charleston, and this was, again, the beginning of that board of directors creation, is I was talking to a friend of mine. She was a year ahead of me at school, and just one of those amazing, kind humans who, again, you just want to emulate. You just want to be, because they get it. They know what it looks like. And the two of us actually lost our moms around the exact same time. And that was actually the pin that brought us together. That was the moment, that was the pinnacle at which we became really close friends, because I reached out to her. Since then, every time I go back to Charleston, we meet up, we talk. And she is, I can't even tell you what she does. They'd probably have to kill me. I know she works for the Department of Defense, and she is a powerhouse within it. Talk about another male-dominated space. And she speaks on large platforms. She does all these great things. And I asked her when we were together a couple of years back, I said, okay, tell me about how, because I was struggling at that point in my career. I was struggling with, I've met, these high levels of leadership, but I feel stuck. I feel like I don't know where else to go. And she was actually the one that suggested that I look up, and she gave me a list of a couple of different ones. And that was how I found this course. And it had workshops and people that were talking about it, and ways in which you could approach the backstabbing. And one of the other things I thought was really interesting was that women are expected, we alluded to this earlier, women are expected to do everything and be amazing. Mm-hmm. And also to not be mean. They're supposed to be comforting and sweet and supportive. And gosh, if you have a bad day, things are said about you, male or female. And that's not okay. And I don't have a solution to that. I know I'm kind of lofting something out there, other than I think it's important to recognize that there are different standards. There is definitely a double standard for women, that we have to be that nurturer, that caretaker, and the sounding board. And I learned a lot over my career through that too. And I think feedback is a really important part of how to get there. It has to be constructive. You cannot be tearing people down, because if you tell it in a manner that will hurt their feelings, it's going to have the opposite effect. And as much as I say we have to be nurturing, we have to be all these things, in the same breath, I'm like, I do have emotions and I am sensitive. So I recognize that about myself. which is definitely something that I have worked on all my life, and how to create that like hard shell. But, then it just takes away the enthusiasm of who you are. But I think as I'm talking about all of these things, the common thread is emotional intelligence, and what that looks like from both a man and a woman is, and especially in this virtual age, you're on virtual calls all the time now. And you have to be able to read that person's body language. You have to be super attuned to what that person is thinking on the other end in order to stop, pause, ask questions, and investigate what they're thinking. And by doing that, then I think you can be all the things. You can be that supportive person. You can, you just be emotionally intelligent. And I wish that were something that more people did.
Yeah, emotional intelligence oftentimes is more important than, can be more important than the technical side of things, because you can have a very technically strong person, but if they're toxic, they break down the whole culture and the whole team. And so you need both, but that emotional intelligence is really important, and often much, much harder to teach than the technical side. And I'm glad that you came back to the whole mother, working mom sort of thing, because mom, but also just working woman, because it is true. So much more is expected from a woman. Even, I just think of what I have to do in the morning to just get ready, the makeup and the hair, and I wish I didn't have to, but I'll just say it, I'm not 29, I am 48, and there are wrinkles, and the 3 kids, and I love my husband, but the husband, they have given me some wrinkles and some gray hair that's covered up. Just to get ready to walk out the door is so much more. And talk about the demands of everything from the outside. I mean, we put my husband's, the dad's number as the first call, but who does the school call? They call me. I love my children. Dad's there, and he's very capable, wants to, but who do they usually go to first for something? They come to me. I may not even be home. I might be at the office. He may be home. They come to me. They text me. It could be any number of things. It always makes me think about the Barbie monologue of, be pretty, but not too pretty. Talk about your accomplishments, but not too much, because it might be bragging. Be sentimental, but not too sentimental, because then you're too emotional. And that's not talking about the physical things that we go through on a fairly regular basis. There's a lot that's asked of us. And to your point, we step up above and beyond, and we're warriors, and we handle it and more.
And we're the hardest on ourselves than anybody else can ever be. And I love that you brought up the Barbie monologue, because I remember watching that in the movie theater with my now 13-year-old son. And I was like, yes, this is it. This is like encapsulating everything. And you said a lot there, which I love, because women are expected to not age, hence the 29-year-old joke. Not expected to look your age, because ageism is alive and well, especially for women. And so the amount of money that we spend on keeping ourselves look youthful and radiant. My hairstylist is the only one, aside from my husband, who knows how old I actually am. And that was actually debatable too, that my husband ever knew how old I was. He knows now, obviously. But, and just the clothes that you wear, and you have to be put together, and you have to say the right things, and you have to do the right things, and you have to be, and mind you, I'm from Charleston. I know I've mentioned that a couple of times, but there is a different grace that is expected from Southern ladies when you're in public. The way your children act. You never yell at your children in public. I still don't do that. I don't think that's okay. But sometimes you have to. And, you pull them over to the corner. You're like, come here, kid. I need to talk to you about this. But, I think I've written about this in a couple of books about or at least one that I can think of, is being pregnant in Charleston, in the business world, being the only woman who had been pregnant in that male environment. And all of my clients were male. I would wear skirts on the days that I had sales calls because I knew, not that I necessarily wanted to wear a skirt because it was more comfortable, because P.S. it's not. And I had to wear hose at the time. So that was like added drudgery. But I knew that if I went in, this young 28-year-old thing, and I went in and I was wearing my skirt and I was all put together, that I would get the attention of the person I was selling to. That kills me because I have a 23-year-old daughter. And I think about the things that I had to go through in order to get ahead in the world. And going back to your question from a while back about have things changed? Yes and no, but yes. I don't think this generation would put up with it, and good for them. And I think it's because our generation, we're telling them, you're smart, you don't have to have looks. You just have to be able to hold a conversation and hold your own. And of course, look put together. But I say the same thing to my sons. Like, we're not going to walk out of the house with our shirt untucked or our hair unkempt. I mean, we're going to look like we got our stuff together. But for my daughter, I look at she's amazing, first of all. And she has more gumption and self-confidence than I ever did. She probably has more than I do even today. And I couldn't be prouder of her. And I think what's so important is it starts at home. It starts with us. And it starts with us telling our kids how valued and treasured they are. That falls in line with something that happened recently. I know of a young child, and this happens every day. So even if it wasn't last week or 3 weeks or 4 weeks ago, it happens all the time. Mental health is a real, real problem. And it's not a problem that people have it. It's a problem that people don't speak about it, although they speak about it much more than they used to, which, bravo. I think everybody should have a therapist because you need somebody to talk to and to run through things who have been trained to be able to address that. Children's Hospital has that in many of the schools around St. Louis, which is awesome because they need that. They're building a mental wellness, health and wellness center in Webster Groves that has approximately 88 inpatient beds, which is a huge need for this community. And mental health, I remember hearing Michael Phelps, the Olympic swimmer. I heard him at a conference I went to, and he was talking about mental health. When you look at mental health in this world that we live in, insurance doesn't pay for it. Just let that sink in. Insurance doesn't pay for mental health, for you to see a therapist. What about the kids who can't afford it? What about their parents who can't afford it, who are going through death and, depression or postpartum or whatever is going on in their life, and they don't have a professional that they can go and see and sit down? So what is the option? Suicide? That's not an option. That is terrible. And when I hear of stories about that, it rocks me to my core to know that a teenage child doesn't feel like they have somebody who they can talk to, who they can, a trusted adult or friend or something, or that even the trusted friend didn't go to a trusted adult to say, hey, my friend is in trouble here. We need to do something. And instead, their only way out is their way out of the world in general. And that kills me. So going back to my daughter, when I look at her and I see how confident and able, and it just reminds me how very important it is to keep your children close, even though they're trying, even though they're challenging. My goodness, the two of us had some battle royales. I would say all of us have, but at the end of the day, she knew I loved her. They all know I love them. I'm here for them. I'm checking in on them. I do the random room search or the, hey, you don't want me in your room, but guess what? I'm going to sit here until you talk to me. And even if we're sitting there in silence, they know that you love them and you care for them. And then telling them how proud you are of them. And I don't know as if I got that as much as I don't think any of my peers did when we were growing up. You know, we talk about the blue ribbon children and that everybody gets a blue ribbon. I think there's merit in that, honestly, is just because you didn't win this event doesn't mean that you are worthless. And really fostering that into kids, I think, is important, because I think it plays out throughout the rest of their life. And I see it in both my older kids. You know, the daughter's about to graduate college very, very soon. And then I have a 19-year-old who's a freshman in college. And both of them couldn't be more proud of what they're doing.
Yeah, I agree. As a Gen Xer, it's far more. We had this with our youngest, who were like, just, you know, she's an 8th grader, try out for the play. You know, you may like it, and you're probably less likely to try out in high school because there's maybe more risk and there's going to be more people there. So, and that was my husband's thought. Good job for him. The conversation with her was try out, and you don't get it. Big deal. Like, done. But the win is that you tried out, and she got the call back, and it's like, great. The win is, but again, the win is that you tried out. It's awesome that you get the call back, and she does have a part. We just kept hammering home that the win is that you're trying. The win is you're taking the risk. And so you may not get on stage, you may not get that blue ribbon there. You're taking the risk and you're learning something from this. And I think it's focusing on that. Whereas back in my day, it was we're going to focus on all the mistakes, and in a way that it's like from an bad point of view.
Yes. And
we're going to focus on the outcome versus the effort. And so I think we're learning more because there's so many great people out there studying this and sharing it on all these different social media platforms. And so we're learning all that. And everything else, I think you're right. And I agree with. And whether it's parenting, and I think they're in a better place, confidence wise, self-worth wise. And I always carry parenting over to leadership. I think it's the same. You know, if you approach it from that caring confidence, wanting to help them, build them up, just like mentoring, coaching, all of that. So many great pieces, because we could go on for more hours, although the problem is we don't have the room all day. And if my husband had to edit this, I'd have to listen to the days and days he'd be editing. But I know we could have so many more good snippets because that's who you are. We talked about your work with the Children's Hospital, Spry Digital, the networking, 1 degree of separation. I mean, you have so much great content out there. They can find you. Obviously, Spry Digital has its own website, LinkedIn. You've got artwork out there, so much good stuff. So I'm going to stop talking about it because I'm going to let you share how people can find you, follow you, connect with you.
Sure, absolutely. LinkedIn is bar none the best way. Beth Gunter, Gunter. Sometimes people misspell it, so that's why I like to spell it. The 1 degree of separation. The next one, I don't know when this will be posted, but we have one on March 12th, and we have another one on May 2nd, which is a Thursday. And then also Instagram So Virginia Line Publishing, it's Virginia_line_publishing. That's where you'll find my artwork. And Spry Digital. If you have a need to grow your business, I would love to help you and have a conversation, not a sales pitch, a conversation. And thank you so much for having me today. This has been fantastic. And for anyone who has nerves about sitting in on one of these deals, if you know anything about me, public speaking is not always my favorite thing to do, but Cynthia and JJ both have done a fantastic job of making this just like a living room conversation. So thank you.
And we talk about taking a risk, and the universe was just saying, we needed you on because I know you have so much great wisdom to share. So I'm glad we could convince you. You took the chance, and I knew it would be great. So thank you very much, Beth.
Thank you. I have one last quote for you. Do something every day that scares you. Eleanor Roosevelt.
This concludes another episode of the She Lift Project podcast. To hear more episodes of the show, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And to learn more about our mission of helping women reach higher levels of success, visit sheliftproject.com and sign up to receive the latest news, ebooks, videos, and more.